God is doing incredible things in our church. I love getting to be part of this thing. But if we are not careful, if we take our eyes off of Jesus, if we get distracted from the mission God has given us and we start becoming inwardly focused and it becomes more about our preferences, more about your preferences, more about your preferences, more about my preferences than the mission of God, the same thing will happen to us. Our selfishness will completely derail the work that God is doing here. Have you ever met somebody who takes more than they give? You ever met somebody like that? Come on. Yeah. All right, listen, now would not be the right time to point to somebody in this room, okay? Don't do that. And the truth is, like, man, like we can talk about that like on a micro level or a micro level, right? So like on a macro level, we can look at some of the incidents that happened this week, right? And we say, hey, that person took more from society than he will ever give. And then sometimes on a micro level, right? Like you might be married to somebody who takes more than they give. You might have somebody in your family, you might have somebody at work, somebody at school. In fact, I'm sure you do, who takes more than they give. Let me ask the inverse of that question. Have you ever met somebody who gives more than they take? You ever met somebody like that? Man, just like one or two, like just name somebody. Name somebody out loud. Who's somebody you know that gives more than they take? Your mother. Listen, I got one on the front row here. I got two on the front row. My grandmother and my wife gives more than they take. Now, here's probably the best question. Which of those two are you? Which of those two are you? Now, I know like defensively, we all have defensive mechanisms in our life, right? And I'm sure every single one of us right now, if I had to raise the hand, if we asked you to raise your hand, like every single one of us would say, I probably give more than I take. But I want to push back on that. I want to challenge that. Is it possible that you're more generous to others than you think you are? Is it possible that you actually take more than you give? To make things even more complicated, life's not always that clear cut, right? There may be certain areas where you give more than you take, but then there's other areas where you take more than you give. Maybe you give more than you take while you're at church, but you take more than you give with your extended family. Or maybe it's the other way around. Like, what is it for you? Do you give more than you take? As we prepare to read Nehemiah chapter 5, let me say a few things about this. We started this church for people who feel like church is not for them. And so if this is your first time in church or the first time in a long time, man, we're so glad that you're here. I hope you feel welcome today. We want this to be a safe place for you to ask questions. There are no questions off the table. You're welcome to ask any question you have. Like, don't ask it right now. Wait till the sermon's over. But man, we want to help you find answers. We want to help you figure out who Jesus is and what he has done for you. And so if this is your first time at church in a long time, let me catch you up to speed where we are. Our church, we're going verse by verse through the book of Nehemiah. And the first 4 chapters of Nehemiah is all about rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. And why is this important? God called Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem because at the same time, they were also rebuilding the temple. And at that day and age, if you're going to rebuild a temple, you're going to have to rebuild the walls around the city. Otherwise, people in the middle of the night, they're going to come in there. They're going to raid the offering. They're going to vandalize. They're going to tear down the temple. All this sort of thing. So you had to build the wall as well. And so God called Nehemiah and a group of people to go rebuild these walls. All right. And for the first 4 chapters of Nehemiah, that's all we're going to do. That's all they're talking about, basically. But Nehemiah chapter 5, we're not going to talk about the wall at all. There's nothing about the wall in Nehemiah chapter 5. And what we're going to learn in Nehemiah chapter 5, and if you're new to church and you may be thinking, is this relevant to my life? Let me assure you it is relevant to your life. And here's why. What we're going to see in Nehemiah chapter 5 is that God cares more about your character than your goals. God cares more about how you accomplish the mission than he cares about the mission in one sense. Now, the mission matters. And in fact, I think we can even point to other things that, hey, if you drop the ball on how you're handling the mission, God will rise up other people who will carry the mission forward. But as a church, I want us to accomplish the mission together. Like if you're pursuing the things of God, like your success matters, but how you accomplish that success matters even more. Like with God, we cannot say that the ends justify the means. The means of getting to the end matter absolutely. So let's get into it. Nehemiah chapter 5, beginning in verse 5, as we open up God's word. These are not just words. These are not just sentences. These are the inspired, recorded words of God. They have the power not only to inform you, they have the power to transform you. Anybody ready to read God's word this morning? All right, let's do it. Verse 5. Now our flesh is as, this is a group of people talking to Nehemiah, and they say, now our flesh is as the flesh of our brothers. Our children are as their children. Yet we are forcing our sons and our daughters to be slaves, and some of our daughters have already been enslaved. But it is not in our power to help it, for other men have our fields and our vineyards. Now let's pause right there. Let me catch you up. The people, they went to go rebuild the wall. And the wealthy people took advantage of the poor people. The wealthy people took advantage of the poor people. They were in a city, Jerusalem. It had been ransacked. It had been destroyed. The economy had been completely wiped out. I'm sure everything was very expensive. And so the hardworking people trying to rebuild this wall had to feed their families, right? They had to provide, they had to live somewhere, they had to clothe their family. And so I'm sure everything was very expensive. And so some wealthy people, the nobles, they figured out a way of like, hey, not only have we found these supplies that we'll sell to you at crazy high cost, but if you're having a hard time paying for it, don't worry. We'll give you a payment plan. And the wealthy people not only created a payment plan, they charged crazy high interest. It got so bad for the people of God that the text we just read said that the poor people were literally having to sell their children into slavery so that they would not starve. That's pretty bad. This leads to point number one. The mission became jeopardized because of the selfishness of a few. And guys, let me be really clear here. We've got to get this right as a church. God is doing incredible things in our church. I love getting to be part of this thing. I love that we are part of this thing together. But if we are not careful, if we take our eyes off of Jesus, if we get distracted from the mission God has given us, and we start becoming inwardly focused, and it becomes more about our preferences, more about your preferences, more about your preferences, more about my preferences than the mission of God, the same thing will happen to us. Our selfishness will completely derail the work that God is doing here. And so again, what's the point here? Just to unpack, I'm gonna be sure I'm teaching Nehemiah 5 faithfully. The point is this: when the poor with Nehemiah were in need, the rich people lent to them, but they charged horrible interest. Now you and I, we can learn a lesson from these people. We can learn a lesson. Show that next slide. We can start strong. We can, right? The lesson is this: we can start strong, but fall into mission compromising selfishness pretty easily due to our greed, our anger, or our fear. There's a lot of different ways that somebody can fall into being selfish. And if we're not careful, we will fall into the same thing.